Welcome back. Thanks for joining me for another episode. We're in the warm and dry today, which is fantastic. However, we're going to be looking at the dashboard wiring, which I'm not quite so excited about. Now, I don't think it's really worth me having the camera running and for me to speed it up 6 or 8 times. I don't think you're really going to get too much from that. So instead, I think I'll just crack on and stop and talk about what I've been doing as I go. So let's have a look first of all to see what we've got. All right, so first thing first, I've got my dashboard. I've got all the dials in. I've got my little buzz bar extension sort of blocks in. Everything's nice and neat. I've had to stick some masking tape around these lights because they just kept on falling out. But once the leather's in, they'll be fitting snugly. I've connected the connectors that go into the back of these dials, all dead easy. It's really great, this series of dials. I think they're the flight instruments. They don't have a separate bulb, but you have to try and squeeze in and connect up. And the bracket is a lot more easy to deal with. So that's all good. They're quite easy to tell apart. I had all these bundled up together, but they're fairly easy to understand. The clock has an extra cable coming out of it, and that's so you can adjust the clock by short presses and long presses. Likewise, the speedometer also has a button on it, so you can program the speedo, and then everything else only fits into one slot. It's got small connections for the rest of the dials here, and you've got a larger connection up here for the rev counter. So that's all good. I've got my range of tools, although that will probably be added too. I've got a load of connectors. Just realised I need to go and get some small ring connectors, so hopefully I've got some of those. I've got my instructions here that tell me what to do. I like this because I tick off everything that I've done. So as soon as I've connected one of these, I'll put a tick next to it and mark that off as done. So I've already noticed there's some differences with the instructions. They're still not updating this properly, and really it's a bit slack because it's only a Word document. It must take about 3.5 minutes to update and then re-upload a new version. So the differences so far that I've noticed, there's two 3-pin disconnect plugs here, and they only list one 3-pin in the instructions. I suppose the new 3-pin might be to do with the electric handbrake, but it'd be good for them to write that down. Also, one of these, in my first AK, one of these did have a spare slot which I used for the speedo cable, but they are now all full, but I can't see what they're used for. Right, let's see what I'm going to do first. All right, so wiring worries a lot of people, not least myself. However, just by getting started, things do get a little clearer. So I'm just going to work through all the easy stuff first. For example, I'm going to make one of these blocks and my earth block. So the main earth coming off of the sort of loom, if you like. I'm going to do the main earth to one of these blocks. And then from that, I'm going to earth everything else that I can see or think of or is listed, so I can tick it off. One of these is also going to be the kind of illumination, if you like, for the dials. So I'm going to see which cable comes off of here, off of the loom, to provide sort of power for illumination. And I'm going to terminate it on one of these blocks, and then I can wire all these dials into one of these blocks for its illumination. So I'll obviously be able to tell which of these 4 wires I need to just terminate to the block, and have them all go into it. So that's basically how I'm going to start. And the other block I think is just generally power. I'm not quite sure. So of course I'll do my main power coming off of the loom to the terminal here, and then I'll be able to feed all my other powers off of it. So that's how I'm going to start. So I'll get cracking and I'll give you an update in a minute. All right, so first things first, we're looking at white red for some power, the red, which is gauge illumination, and obviously brown for earth. So going across to our loom here, we've got red here, which is actually handily labelled as illumination, dash lights. Then we got our red white for power and our earth. So they're my three wires that I'm going to be terminating on these connectors here, and then from there I can do my power, earth and illumination wires. So I'm going to do that first and get that all tidied out of the way. All right then, so we're a few minutes in now, well at least half an hour actually. So I have actually joined a couple of wires because it did seem a bit pointless to take, say, this earth separately all the way to the earth over there. So I did just join a couple just to try and make it a little bit more neat and have less wires traversing across. So we've got illumination and earth and dial power at the moment, and then I've also connected the cables from the main loom. So another good idea for you using these is it does kind of anchor the loom in, so when you're kind of wrenching the dashboard in and out and unplugging things, at least you can't really wrench the wires out of other things and off the pins, because they are kind of anchored in, if you like, onto these fixing points here, so you can't really wrench it all out. But there we are. So what's left here on the dials are kind of the signal wires, if you like. So they go to the the fuel gauge wire and everything else on the main loom. So that's what I'm going to do next, and that sort of really finishes up the dials there. And then I'm probably going to look at doing these warning lights up here, because they also obviously go in off most of these wires for oil and hazard warning lights and stuff like that. So I'm going to do them next, and I think I don't think a lot of these earths can daisy chain, because they need to go sort of back to their sensor, but I know you can daisy chain quite a lot of these earths on the Savage switches here, so I'm going to be doing that just to try and keep that nice and tidy. So so there we go. Yeah, half an hour in, and now we'll crack on with a few more. So we're making headway here, albeit slowly. What have I done? So got the pink tacho going to the rev counter, to its signal lead. This signal lead to the speedo will be coming from the gearbox wires, so that's that. I spent some time here daisy chaining my earths all the way to my earth block, and I've done the same with lighting, so that they're all daisy chained to my lighting block. I've put some wires here to the side lights, so hopefully that's right, with its little jumper, and then jumpered to the main light. So I am trying to be careful when I've got jumpers and other wires to wedge into one connection. So I'm just reading the instructions through a couple of times to make sure I catch that and don't end up wasting a little connector when I've realised that it needs another wire going into it. Now I'm having my ignition barrel over here, so I've got 3 wires that need to come over here at the moment, and I didn't want to put any extra tension, and I wanted to give enough slack to be able to plug in my blocks, etc. So as I'm going through, I'm extending the wire. So I just popped out the connector and have extended my red wire. Now the clock is meant to fit on onto the clock wire power. I think it's meant to go onto the same connector as the ignition barrel, but instead of taking 2 wires over here, I've just taken the clock wire and put it into the same connection here as the red wire. So that's nicely extended, and I'll be doing the same with the yellow and purple black. I just am hesitant at the moment because I know a white cable has to come back and go to my start button. So I just need to review that and see what the heck I'm doing there. But generally pretty good, and half neat. So I think what I'm doing next is I'm going to put the indicator wires in, which are kind of these green, black, green, brown, I think, or something. So they need to go onto the indicator lights, but then they also need to be jumpered to the hazard warning light. So that requires 1 connector but 2 wires coming out up here. So I'm going to do that next. Okay, hopefully we're wrapping a few things up here. I've just made an inquiry with AK. I think this white-yellow is meant for the starter. In the instructions it's just white. You don't need the black and yellow cable because we haven't got a 2-speed fan, or at least it can't be wired up like that. So we only have 1 wire going to the fan, and I'm actually going to use this wire for the speedo, and that will go all the way back to the 11 block connector, and then I'm going to be plugging in the sensor wire from the gearbox into where the black and this black and yellow goes, so saving me any additional wiring and connectors. So we'll just make use of that. These 3 wires here, and they're not listed in the instructions, but that's actually for the electric handbrake. So I need to introduce that, and I think I have to mount the electric handbrake kind of circuit board behind the dash. So we'll look at that as well. So that's all good. We've got all the jumpers in place, we're all good. And then I've just been sussing out the ignition barrel. So I've had to extend my purple cable and make it black, and these 2 are put together, and this yellow is separate. So I think the red is going to go here, and then at the top is the thick yellow, and then the purple and orange that I've put in are going to go off this one. So that orange one then goes back to the other side of the start button. And that's about it, I think. All right, so in an effort to close out this dashboard section, I am finished with this. Pretty happy with how everything's gone. It's not too spidery. I've got this main section of loom, and it obviously has to split out to its different places. It's quite good that it's kind of tethered by some of the larger, thicker cables onto these poles here, so it's not pulling on any of the smaller, more fragile wires. So quite happy with that. Plenty of space for it to kind of curl round and plug into the loom in the car. Now, in actual fact, I'm not quite finished with this because we have some information about the electric handbrake. So let's talk about that. Hi, so this section is about the electric handbrake. Now I was all set to maybe mount the electronics for the electric handbrake up behind the dash, thinking that would be nice and neat and out of the way and accessible, because there is a little wheel in there that you can adjust to adjust the kind of pressure that the ram exerts. So I was going to do all that, but I've been trying to get information from different sources and other users. And finally I spoke to Neil at AK, who gave me the full rundown. And I've got to say, it's a bit of a shame they don't put this into their instructions. And their instructions are quite lacking in some basic areas. Just a couple of points, a couple of sentences here and there, just to help you think, or even a reminder to help you during the build of your car, so you don't forget something and you just bear it in mind. Let's have a look at what I found out. Right, so this is the electronics box for the electric handbrake, and you don't mount it anywhere near the handbrake. In actual fact, the loom that is supplied by AK has all the wires that you need to connect into this, and it terminates, or all the wires kind of terminate roughly where the original handbrake used to go. So all the wires come in there, and I've got a diagram of what you need to connect. You need to put a terminal on the end of each of the wires, and you plug them in. So hopefully you can take a still of that. So the whole loom plugs into that, and then there's a wire I think you need to make up yourself, which goes from the plus and minus of the actuator to the actual RAM. Now you do need to make sure that it's plugged in correctly, because you need to make up your own plug here. So there's a little connector on the end of here, and you do need to make sure you've got positive and minus correctly done. I'm not quite sure how you end up accessing or plugging into this little plug. Maybe it goes through the back of the seat in bulkhead, or maybe it comes in with a few other wires, such as the fuel sender into the boot, and then you just make a little hole to the actuator here, perhaps. So I don't know that until I get the body on and I've got the loom out. But you know, that would also be good, useful information, because it's going to be quite fiddly getting your hand up underneath the body and trying to connect this, because you know, really I suppose I need to get the connector on it, and you know, 3 foot of wire or something, so I don't have to fiddle about with that. So that's probably what I will do, and I'll just leave that hanging, so then I can route it through some sort of hole or something, all the way back to the control box. So the control box will end up being over here. Now, AK suggests they put it behind the door card, out of the way, which is, you know, fine. But as the brakes wear, I understand you can adjust this little wheel here very slightly to adjust, you know, take up any slack or adjust the pressure. And if it's all up behind the door card of the body and all trimmed in, then you're not going to be accessing that. So I plan to maybe mount this just behind the sort of driver's seat, you know, more you know, on the edge of the door, and I'm either going to mount it to there and get some sort of cover over the top. There's lots of different circuit board covers or things that you can buy. You know, what's this? About 7 centimeters by 10 or something. Or indeed, I'll mount the box that I find on into the car, and then I can just put this over the top and maybe just give it two or three dabs of hot glue. And I choose hot glue because it just kind of turns rubbery, and it'll be easier just to put a Stanley blade through if you ever need to get back into it, just to separate it or just pull it apart. So I need to just put that over the cover, the box that I've mounted. And all the wires will just feed into it, and I'll have a little notch cut out of the box, and I'll just feed out of that. So that's what I plan to do. So it's always kind of accessible somehow. When that's all wired up, then you come back to the dash, and you've got these new 3 wires, and these 3 wires go to a Savage switch of some sort. So it has these would cross. So this common contact would actually be in the middle, the yellow in the middle, and you'd have blue and red on each side. So you'd be able to switch between the 2. And then, of course, you've got the dashboard light. So this is where it'd be handy to write in the instructions to bear in mind that you've got to mount a switch for your handbrake, which is a bit of a shame because I've just laid all this out nice and symmetrically, and now I've got to find somewhere to put a handbrake switch, which is not great news. And of course the light as well. Now you could make the light actually just light up the handbrake switch, But if you do that, I mean, the lighting of the switches can only have one source, and it might be good to actually have it illuminate like all the other switches do when you turn on the side lights. So and then you'll be able to see the switch more easily in the dark, because you know you're going to be using it quite a lot. With your hand resting on the center tunnel, you can just press the button quite easily. So yeah, so I'm not exactly enamored about that. So I guess basically what I plan to do, I'm going to move this start stop button up into this space here. I'm going to have to fill this button a little bit because it's bigger than all the other Savage switches, and then I'm going to put the handbrake in its place. So that's just great. And then the warning light. Now you could add the warning light up with the tree of other lights. However, I think that it should be perhaps more in line with your eyesight. So I plan to fit it just above the steering wheel here, so you can see it. You know, it's a big blaring, you know, red light that you've still got your handbrake on and you need to release it. So I think that might be quite a good touch. Excuse me. So I'm just going to check that out and turn it over and mark up a few positions, see what I like, and do that. So that's basically it. That is the wiring of the dashboard, and how you wire the electric handbrake. And now onto something else. So that's it for the dashboard finally. Next up, we've got the engine install. I'll see you again.